Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. The other day of love for us, the Jewish day of love, in our calendar is called Tu B'Av, and it's the 15th of Av, and it's a holiday that's really marked because it comes after, just 6 days after another day, which is a day of destruction and mourning and loss, which is Tisha B'Av. Because this is our understanding about the power of love, that there's no other power in the world that can bring healing and make one whole again in the same way as love. So when my daughter Shalva was young, she's now 8 years old, almost 9, it was one of the very first trips away that they were taking without me. And I joined my family in Washington, D.C. a few days later. And I remember getting off the plane, walking through the airport, going towards a baggage claim. And there I saw in the distance my little daughter Shalva running towards me with her arms wide open and jumping in my arms. I remember thinking that moment, I knew at that moment that Shalva and I were just one. We were the same. And that's love. It makes us feel one with other people and with all of creation, really. And so the Torah this week is a story of the revelation of Mount Sinai, the giving of the Ten Commandments. But there's a moment that leads up to it where all the children of Israel are finally encamped at the mountain. And in the Hebrew it says encamped in the singular, as if one person was encamped. Vayachen instead of vayachanu. And so Rashi asks, why one person? How could it be that there was one person encamped? And he says, well, because all the people, all the children of Israel at that one moment had finally got into a place where they were one people with one heart. And the Alexander Rabbi explains that until that moment, well, the people who were traveling through the desert were like all of us. They were anxious, and they weren't always getting along, and they were not seeing the beauty and love in each other, and they were suspicious of each other. And according to the Kabbalah, this reflects these much wider cosmic patterns of disconnect and then reconnect. And there's this idea in Kabbalah that the very first worlds that God created shattered because it could not hold the intensity of the divine light. And so the world that we now live in is a world not of unity as was intended, but a world of duality, where all the sparks of light are mixed up with the darkness, the husks of darkness. And so what does it mean? It means we live in a world of separateness and aloneness. This is just the world we live in. And the Kabbalah calls this world the Olam HaNekudot, the world of dots, because we're all like dots, separate from each other, only thinking of ourselves. And this is the source of all our pains and struggles, says the Kabbalah. So what's the antidote? The antidote is to join the dots. And you join the dots of love, you join the dots of relationship, you create bonds of connection and interdependence, and that's what brings wholeness to our lives and the whole cosmos. And so when the children of Israel were at the foot of Mount Sinai, they finally began to feel some of the awe of what was about to happen, and they experienced a deep connection, not just as slaves, but as free men and women, descendants of Abraham and Sarah. And they started to think, we've got to start getting along over here. If not, this whole project is not going to work out for us. And so they started to feel and see their common bond. We're all here together. There's this power of divine love that's binding us all together. And that's what allowed them to receive the Torah, and that's what brought in that force of divine love as the foundation of Sinai, as the foundation of all of our tradition, that love. Right? It says that the clouds of Mount Sinai were like the chuppah, and the Torah was the ketubah. It was this special moment of love, the bringing healing. And that's what we still try and draw on. That's what we're a heady tradition. We love study, but we're also a tradition of love. Because love is the power that brings healing. All you need is love. Yeah. Love is all you need. Love is the answer. And so, why bring it right now? Because when I think of Jewish love, I think of that the day comes not on the 14th of February, but I think it comes right after Tisha B'Av, after we've experienced wholeness, where we talk about the mourning, destruction of temple. And that's when Judaism said, we need a day of love after all of that. And we need a day of love right now in our world. To bring love, compassion, and to remind us of all of that. But that's what binds us together. That's what makes us closest to people we love. And from that oneness comes wisdom, comes healing, comes also the possibility of receiving something new, which we're all hoping for right now. Something new and something wonderful. And so to open ourselves to that force, to that moments when, remember those moments where our children come running at us, or we see someone we really love, we haven't seen in a while, to remind ourselves that we're all one. And we don't need a day of love to remind ourselves of that. We can do that every day. Every day we can be reminded of that powerful thought, worth being reminded, that current of the universe that brings everything towards wholeness, towards peace, towards joy. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.